This recap consists the full manga chapter, as it only has one chapter and no more continuation. The story starts as we cut into the life of a high school boy named Furuya. Furuya is seen thinking about how his girlfriend died, narrating that it was a fortunate event and that his close friends and family are reaching out to give their condolences to him. He thought that every single day he would see his girlfriend. Seeing her laugh and enjoy the world, he couldn't accept losing his girlfriend, and as to why he hasn't gone to school for the last couple of days, only staying at home and trying to process what had happened, making the image as he is depressed but also sad on the current situation to everyone around him. Furuya, on the other hand, is not exactly what everyone seems to think he is after his girlfriend's death. The truth is Furuya is the main culprit, aka murderer of his girlfriend, and that he's only making it seem this way as to have the perception he cared and out of suspicion. Furuya is seen being relieved and free at last from his girlfriend now that she's gone. With this, he can now start living a normal life again. He could do and say whatever he wants without being questioned again, truly having freedom from all the constraints on having a girlfriend. Which shows how Furuya met his girlfriend in school, as he drops his eraser, to which his future girlfriend picks it up and gave it to him. This starts the meeting of Sarah and Furuya being labeled as the cuttest girl at his school. Furuya still remembers her smelling like flowers, describing her long eyebrows and perfectly big round eyes, and also her kind voice, to which he is certain that captivated not only him but the boys on his class at the time. Furuya never thought in his wildest dream did think that the cuttest girl and very beautiful Sarah would confess to him on the back of the school. This made his heart fluttered and never realized this girl would be his girlfriend. His head was in a daze, going through the clouds, full of butterflies as he fell in love with her. Until that day at least. Furuya was being stalked by her 24/7s and always on his business, receiving multiple texts and always bugging him on what he is doing and whom he is with. Furuya became more paranoid as he is always being monitored 24/7s even when he is at home. The two finally met as Furuya was walking home from school. He stumbles upon Sarah holding a knife in her hand, staring ominously at him. Furuya, angered by this behavior, Furuya burst out his feelings and became vocal. He has had enough of her, following her everywhere but also installing listening devices. Add to that, she also installed a GPS tracker on him without any content, despite that she threatened him, wondering what does she wants from him. Sarah answered that Furuya has her and that she would do anything for him and that he doesn't need anyone or anything else. Sarah pointed out to her wallet and that she check her wallet every half hour, giving the explanation and point of view that it's the same as that. She always checks something important as you get anxious if it goes missing. Sarah threatened Furuya to do as she says and she won't hurt him. Furuya scared backs away and told her he can't fall asleep without sleeping pills because of her and that he's gonna report her if she keeps doing as she pleases. Sarah answered with a heavy never. She said it to her face that she will never break up with him even if she died, scary Furuya and frightening him, giving chills to his spine. Furuya acted impulsively, pushed Sarah away, making Sarah fall down the stairs and shoving her down with a single push. Sarah hit her head and fell down the stairs, having multiple fractures and multiple head injuries to which she won't recover from. Furuya fled the scene as soon as he could, and that he was lucky there were no witnesses around when it had happened. The police ruled out the possibility of foul play upon investigating the crime scene. The police later went on to announce it was an accident and her death being covered up. Furuya, on the other hand, is grateful she is now dead and could finally live in peace. Thinking of going out alone today, but can't go out as he skipped school as he was in the center of attention as her former girlfriend is now dead. It'd be a pain to also act out on what had happened. Furuya laying down on the bed, Sarah pops up and asks him what about a date, frightening Furuya and giving him a shock. Furuya gets up immediately with a cold sweat. Gasping heavily, he shouted Sarah as she is in front of him with a grind on her face. Furuya tells Sarah that didn't she die, and Sarah said that sounds like a script from a movie. She went on to say she died and pointed out her feet not having any and is now floating. Furuya, still with a cold sweat, came up with the conclusion she became a spirit, and that Sarah loves Furuya so much she came to see her. Furuya goes out of the room and came back sprinting. He threw salt at her, to which he said Sarah should go away and leave him alone. Not having any effect, Sarah is acting cute again for him as salt won't get rid of her. Furuya, still angered by this fact she's now a spirit. He told her to shut up and understand his hardship of his life and what he had to live with every single day. Sarah, still a bit dumb and late to recognize, she said she kinda does know a bit. Furuya raged on her as because of her his mental health became ruined and wake up terrified every day, scared to meet and talk to people, still with the grudge of what her presence had done to him. He asked Sarah if she's still going to make him feel that way. Even in her death, Sarah became gloomy and apologetic on what she has done, and told him that even after all of that she's still his, and that even if he pushes her away or even kill her, she still loves him despite all that, and doesn't care if he's a murderer with a scary face and transparent body. Sarah went ahead as physics doesn't apply to her. She be with him as she can go through walls. Furuya, still in cold sweat and a depressed mental state, wants Sarah to leave him alone, and it was his fault as he's nearing his limit. Sarah goes on to tell him that she's not haunting him out of his free will or anything like that. Sarah explains that if she could move on to the other world she would have already have, and that he can make her go away if she has no regrets. Furuya became weak and stumbled while holding the handlebar. He fell down slowly on his knees, thinking how is it possible he's seeing spirits. But how much more terrifying it's his former girlfriend that just died is now in front of him, having a supernatural phenomenon floating in front of his eyes. With the knowledge of not having any choice to make her go away even after her death, he asks how she can make her go away and fill her with no regrets. Sarah goes on to say she has a request for him, and since he killed her, the least he could do is hear out her request and to fulfill it. Furuya shudders heavily as she remembers the incident he made when he pushed her to her death and tried pushing her away. Furuya's hands went through Sarah's as he can't touch nor feel her, as she is now a spirit and can't kill her again. Sarah goes on if he wants to break up with her he has no choice but to listen. Furuya agreed upon the request as beggars can't be choosers in this circumstances. We cut to Furuya outside on a date and Sarah being excited going out with Furuya. She tells him to not be so quiet as they are outside on a date. Furuya whispered he can't be talking to himself as no one else can see her and doesn't want to start talking to himself instead. Sarah, being a student, wanted to this place that she always wanted to go. Furuya thought that even if after death he's stuck with her, he rather much listen and make her move on, trying to fulfill her request, but instead of request he's just going out on dates, and this time it's a cafe. And that Sarah looks like a normal, ordinary girl as she smiles going into the cafe. As Furuya went inside the cafe, he took a seat for one and sat the back of the cafe while waiting his tea and cake got served. Furuya questions if this is what Sarah wanted to eat and that she can't eat this as she is now a ghost. Furuya went ahead and tasted the shortcake. Upon eating it, he tasted a normal shortcake found at any other cafe. Sarah is in disbelief as she thought this place's specialty shortcake is amazing and from what she heard when she was alive. Sarah, being skeptical and wanted to taste for herself, asked Furuya a bite as part of her request, but Furuya, knowing it won't work as she is now a ghost despite this, he still did her a favor and tried feeding her. Sarah took a bite out of the shortcake but just goes through right her, and that she is immediately met with regret and sadness as she can't have a bite of the cake. Sarah just smiled it off and told Furuya she can't really take a bite and it doesn't work anymore. Furuya thought Sarah looked sad for a second as he saw her being down for a moment. As Furuya ate the short cake, he realized this was the first time they ever spent a day like this and that he sensed something off about Sarah as they started dating. Although for better or for worse, Sarah always had a smile on her face, so it caught him by surprise to witness that she had a frown face and thought Sarah can always have a face on her too. Not only that, they didn't really spend any time together that much, and he just thought of himself even when Sarah was pursuing her much more. Although a bit crazy, she still did anything physically, and Furuya could have handled it like a better man, but also communicated that he needed a bit of space. Or this could have been resolved if he was a bit more matured to understand another person's feelings and personality if they just try to, not just being self-centered and ignorant of the other person. After the date, Sarah complimented the cafe having a nice atmosphere, and she is glad that they both went together, as she couldn't do so before since Furuya always never replied to her messages when she was alive. Furuya, bewildered by this fact, said sorry, to which Sarah said it was okay, assuring him. Furuya found this strange, as this doesn't seem right. He always knows Sarah as abnormal and questions himself if she was always this normal. To his knowledge, Sarah was always a stalker and kept tabs on him. She also seemed like the type to not go on dates. But right now he thinks differently about her. Right now Furuya thinks of Sarah is very cute, and how dare he thinks like that even though he was the one that killed her. Furuya got called out while he was in his thoughts. Sarah always knew she stood out in school when he was alive, Furuya questioning this. As Sarah goes on to explain that she always thought other girls would have their eyes on him because of her popularity and that she panicked. She always wanted to spend normal days like this and in tranquil, enjoying her high school life quietly and possibly be happy, and that she is again sorry for what she has done. Furuya, first time hearing her thoughts, but also hearing her feelings, he wonders why he didn't hear this before, and maybe it's because he never asked her and was busy trying to desperately protect himself, coming to the conclusion that Furuya thought that he overthink everything before and that this was all his fault to begin with, thinking he was the problem all along. Furuya asked Sarah a question if she hates him. Sarah smiled and told Furuya that if they can go on dates like this, then she is glad she is now dead. With a warm felt answer like that, Furuya is still in question about what had happened. As the two were walking along the street, Sarah turned around and told Furuya that he shouldn't turn himself in even if he feels guilty or became overwhelmed on his feelings right now. Sarah said this to assure him and that she isn't really mad or hate him for killing her. She said this with a smile on her face, and Furuya had a disturbed but troubled face. Furuya thought to himself that even Sarah said it isn't his fault on what happened to her and what he did to her. Sarah was a full-on stalker, and if he didn't made any move nor defended himself, she would have killed him. He assured himself, coming to the conclusion that he did nothing wrong and that his actions were purely based on the actions of Sarah. With this, he questioned himself that if he could really say that he didn't do anything wrong on the whole situation. As the days passed, Furuya continued doing Sarah's request, which were most of it was what couples do. He didn't notice any unusual behavior like before, and that she just became a completely ordinary cute girlfriend. The only thing different was that she was a spirit, and it were mostly just him alone visiting places. After this, Furuya eventually went back to school. As the school was bustling, everyone visits Sarah's desk and even put up a vase flower sitting on her desk. Someone even changed the water every day. Not one person knew she was a stalker or any yander behavior, and it was obvious everyone loved her, especially her classmates. Furuya right now in class is sitting with Sarah and is thinking as to why was he so scared of Sarah back then. Right now she seems harmless and that she can't physically harm him now, which could be one of the reasons he isn't scared nor paranoid about her. Furuya, after class as he was heading home, asks Sarah what does she want for her birthday. Sarah is happy that Furuya remembered her birthday. She said anything is fine, and Furuya said that it won't do if he can't do anything for her on her birthday. Sarah thought hard to think about the things she wanted for her brother, although in the end she came up with holding hands. Sarah proposed to just placing them together and they don't have to actually touch. Furuya, with a serious look on his face, agreed to do so. Furuya's thoughts went over as the thought of Sarah being happy with a simple request and her expression changing by doing a small effort on his actions towards her. Even though she never be able to touch him again, add to that she's satisfied with just pretending to be his girlfriend, as he said that his tears started falling. Sarah questioned Furuya on what's wrong. He starts to cry in public around people, and Furuya thought that it was his fault that she can only pretend. Furuya went back ahead to school, but he skipped class in the rooftop stairs. Sarah is surprised as it's rare for Furuya to skip classes and that she's a bit angry as he only keeps answering with a simple response. Furuya asked Sarah if spirits can touch each other and Sarah said yes, they can. Being a spirit, you can't see the other but can bump into others who haven't moved on for a long time. With this knowledge, Furuya climbed up the fence and over near the edge of the rooftop. Sarah said what Hei is doing is dangerous. Furuya apologized as they couldn't hold hands on her birthday and that he is on the edge of the rooftop. Sarah's face became horrified and darkened. Sarah shouted that she doesn't care about those things and tries to stop Furuya on whatever he plans to do. Furuya can't live with himself knowing Hei's guilty that he killed another person. He admitted that even after her death, he couldn't come off the sleeping pills. In fact, he had to take more in order to sleep at night. Furuya admitted that it was his fault that he was suffering and not because of Sarah. On his own conclusion, he didn't listen to her feelings and felt relieved that she died. Never forgiving himself for thinking that way, he realized how self-centered and full of guilt he was. He can't save her by turning himself in, but due to the guilt, he can't live with it any longer. Finally understanding, Furuya came up with the conclusion that she did nothing wrong to him and that she was simply loving him to her best, but also wasn't understanding her feelings or try to even communicate. Furuya, on the verge of overwhelming emotions, finally wanted to let go and free himself from all the guilt. He apologized that he got a boyfriend, someone like him, and that if he dies, she surely moved on. Sarah, shocked and disturbed by this, tries to stop Furuya from jumping, but ultimately was too late and couldn't stop him. Furuya met his doom and finally died. Watching his own body filled with his own blood, Furuya in the end became a spirit much faster, and that Sarah can finally hold him and hug him. Sarah went off to Furuya and started crying. Sarah goes on to say that Furuya is an idiot, and he apologizes for making her sad and that she could move on now and not stick around him anymore. Sarah still crying as he did that for her. Sarah, while crying, said that she was just happy being around him and that he didn't need to feel guilty, not having many things to do anymore because Hei is not dead. Furuya said it was fine and it's the only way to pay for his sins. Furuya did that as an idiot that died for her. With a massive plot twist, Sarah all along was a big yander, a crazy girlfriend, saying that Furuya was a big diet and she was surprised. Furuya confused as to what she's saying. Sarah goes on to explain that she was acting all along and now that she can touch her, she was just waiting for him to die all along this whole time. Furuya, still confused, became even more destroyed. Sarah explained that she liked him to begin with and that it's pointless if she can't touch him. She couldn't kill him by cursing at him or throwing objects, to which she planned this all to make him lead to his own demise. She came up to the conclusion on suicide by filling him with guilt, which will eventually lead to his death. Which what exactly what he did, Sarah making a joke that cat got your tongue as Furuya can't speak. Furuya, in disbelief, is shocked and questions did she tricked him this whole time. Sarah didn't told him to kill himself and that if Hei's gonna be haunted by something dumb like guilt, he shouldn't have pushed and killed her, but she finds this cute about him and what's done is done. Furuya became even more depressed and that he said Sarah didn't do anything wrong, making his mental state even more. Now that the two is a split, they are now together again and in the same realm, cursing them for all eternity to be together, thus ending our story. This one is a roller coaster ride and gave a huge massive plot twist. If you like the recap, I'll be uploading more to give the audience you guys the content you want, and watch. This is Enyu Kanari. Peace out.